Enough of the doom and gloom. Bally Sports North's Kevin Gorg joins us to spring some positivity into the Minnesota Wild fan base and blame me once more for the poor postseason prediction. Plus, Kirsten and I give our offseason priorities list to Bill Guerin. As always, we're created by New Voice Studios, brought to you by Talk North, Grainbelt, Jim Beam, Livea, and Royal Credit Union. This is Season 4, Episode 176.
At Jim Beam, they know the importance of tradition, like chanting, "Let's play hockey" prior to the start of each game, or playing the state of hockey anthem after a Wild win. This season, raise one to your fan family with a bourbon that invites us all to come as friends and leave as family. Jim Beam Bourbon Whiskey, the official bourbon whiskey partner of the Minnesota Wild and XL Energy Center. Drink smart. Jim Beam Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. 40% alcohol by volume. Copyright 2021. James B. Beam Distilling Company, Incorporated, Claremont, Kentucky.
Hello, everybody. We're back, episode 176. On your normal day, you're welcome. We love it. Kind of back to a regular schedule, which unfortunately for us means an off-season schedule. Kirsten, what does your off-season look like? I know a lot of work, but not the fun kind.
A lot of work, not the fun kind. Hey, off season, but bills still got to be paid. I'm a single dog mom, so got to take care of the bodes. So yeah, work is definitely, unfortunately, a priority for me. Not all of us can just hang out in the backyard.
Don't be jealous of my lifestyle.
I am jealous because that's all I want to be doing. So yes, that is a comment filled with jealousy. But besides that, like, I'm still going to find time to have fun. Hopefully it's a summer filled with lake days, going to baseball games, and then some travel mixed in as well. So just, enjoying what Minnesota has to offer in the best time of the year.
Exactly. Maybe checking out Canterbury Park to see our boy K-Train, aka KG, aka Kevin Gorg. He joins us in the next segment to break down a little bit of the Minnesota Wild season, which we did last week while we were very heated. Kirsten, now that we've had a little over a week to really mesh together our feelings, and this is the big controversy. Is it a disappointment? Is it a failure? When you instinct, is this season for the Minnesota Wild a disappointment or a failure? What are your thoughts?
Well, and this might be an unpopular take. I feel any season you don't win the Stanley Cup is a failure. I mean, that's the goal at the end of the year, right? So if you're not the one team, there's 31 teams that failed in their season. That's probably a very dramatic approach, but I mean, you all have the common goal at the end of the day. I would say as far as starting to develop a little more talent, get the young guys a little more accustomed, that's probably more, I don't want to say success because there's still work to be done, but there's promise moving forward. And I think there is some light to be shed on the development of the younger guys. Almost like a passing of the torch in Minnesota is what we're approaching, it feels like.
We're going to get to some of those younger guys, the impact that they're going to need to make, because Bill Guerin has no money to pay anybody else that's not on a ELC or a other small end contract. But I would say, I said this on Judd's Hockey Show, and I stand by it, but I love your failure take. That's very true. Every team's a failure. Give them all Fs if they don't win the Stanley Cup, right? It's dramatic, but I kind of like it. I said that I think it's a disappointment because my expectations were so low for this team this year, just because I knew that it was going to be some growing pains. I mean, go back to our episode at the beginning of the year. We both thought they were bubble playoff teams at best, right? I wouldn't have even been shocked if they had missed it. So that's why I say it's a disappointment. Like, yes, it's a frustrating disappointment. Mm-hmm. If I'm being honest, I didn't have the expectations for them to do much of anything, and they went and messed around and thought they were really good and whatever. It's frustrating. The playoffs, I could say, are a failure, right? Because they didn't take advantage of what they were capable of. But as a whole, the season was just disappointing to me. And that's not to be nice. Somebody was like, well, what? It was because you work so closely with the team. Like, no, I just think that it's not a complete failure because I didn't have the best expectations for them. So let's not decide with our boy Billy G, who is already, Kirsten, making some moves, starting with Marcus Johansson, extending him to a 2-year contract at a very reasonable 2.1 mil. I'm excited about it. I like it. I wanted that to get done because I knew he was one of the more likely affordable unrestricted free agents. But what are your feelings?
I think it's huge. I mean, we talked last week about it. I'm pretty sure he was a guy that I mentioned, like, this is a deal that needs to get done. Just seeing what he brought after the trade deadline to that Wild team, especially playing with Matt Boldy, he was very impressive. So I would say disappointing week, but that was the highlight coming out of this past week.
Looking at the rest of the unrestricted free agents, and we talked about this a little bit in our last episode, but now that we have a little bit more clarity on possibly the money, are there any other guys on that list, which includes Matt Dumba, John Klingberg, Gus Nyquist, Ryan Reeves, and then I think Sam Steele's a restricted free agent, Philip Gustafson's restricted, Duhaime's restricted. Anybody on the UFAs that you absolutely want to bring back, no matter how you can make it work?
I really want Gustav Nyquist. I really want him back, but it's probably not going to be possible. And I'm just bracing myself for that. But just seeing what he brought and how much potential there could be there, I really want him back. I really do.
I know. And he's a family guy. So he said he loves the area, which I think bodes well for Minnesota. But that's a lot of money probably going out in order to keep him. I mean, he definitely did a lot. He had probably the best line of why he was so frustrated after getting bounces. He's like, the playoffs are now wide open. And they truly are wide open, you guys. Like, it's crazy to see. I find myself watching less and less playoff hockey right now. I'm still in mourning, if you will. I would agree, though. Nyquist, I think Reeves is probably a possibility just because he is cheap and because I think he really loves it here.
I also think he would be more willing to take a team-friendly deal. I think the only thing with him was he wants more than 1 year because he doesn't want to move his family around anymore.
Right.
So I feel like that's pretty doable still, though. I feel like he'd be a little more accommodating because of taking his family into consideration.
I mean, yeah, I would agree. And he brings some, a little bit of electricity, not just from the physical presence he has on the ice, but just in general in that locker room. We all saw how he really helped get the train back on its tracks when they traded for him in November. Now this leads me to my next hot take question.
I love a hot take.
They're going to have to trade some people, and they're going to have to trade some people that people like or people think they like. Now, the lucky thing for a lot of players is a lot of them have protection. One player who doesn't have protection, and people are going to think I hate this poor guy, but I don't. I love him. Probably going to still get him on the pod unless he listens to this and thinks I hate him as well.
I'm scared who you're going to say because I think I know who it is, and I don't want it to be an option. Yeah, I don't want it to be an option. We cannot lose him. And when I saw this tweet, that your ominous tweet about there's going to be names getting traded that you've all come to know and love, I knew you were talking about Marcus Foligno. Take his name out of your mouth. We need him. Keep him. We need him. He's not leaving.
He has no protection. He's the easy one to remove from the equation to get a little bit more money. And unfortunately, I know what he brings in the locker room, you guys. I know it.
Jessi, I'm looking at you and Bill Guerin. If you are listening, which you better be, I will find people I know to send you this clip. Do not get rid of Marcus Foligno. Do not, especially because if you can't afford Dumba, which is very likely that he's gone after any time now, it's very likely he's going to be gone. Who do you have as captain? You have Jared Spurgeon. We know he's a quieter guy. You need a loud presence in that locker room. That's a conversation for another time. Right now, we're talking about Marcus Foligno. You need a loud voice. You need that loud presence. That is Marcus Foligno. You cannot get rid of Foligno and Dumba.
Sounds like you're making a bid for yourself.
For to be captain?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I had bigger aspirations of being in the front office or being head coach.
This is true. Yeah, you were the coach. I'm the GM. We'll make it work. But
no, you're the assistant to the general manager.
Assistant to the assistant general manager.
Yes.
Yeah, that plays. Bill Guerin basically gave me the job that he said I should apply for with everybody else. But no, I hate to say it to you guys. I really, really do. Like, I really adore Marcus Foligno and everything he does and the person that he is. As a player, he is a dime a dozen. It's not somebody that you're necessarily going to miss. He kind of just, there's no protection. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to ask him to waive anything. You don't have to do this. I'm not saying it'll happen, but I am saying they will have to make a move like that. It's going to be somebody you like. They will have, frankly, again, as we said last year too, there are maybe 2 or 3 guys that you're not getting rid of, right? And that's Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Boldy, and I don't even know who else. Jonas Brodin, I would guess, is probably pretty safe. I'm just going to say that. Mostly because that's where those are the 3 that I would keep safe from anything, right? Like, keep them in my little nest.
Well, considering we barely have any defense and we're losing Dumba, Jonas Brodin shouldn't even be a question.
I'll keep it. I'll lock it up tight in the safe. It'll be fine. And I love Spurge too, but I mean, he's another guy that do you look at freeing up some cap space? Because Bill Guerin, as it sits right now, has something like 8.1 million to play with next year. But you're forgetting the recalls and you have to pay the guys from Iowa. So God forbid somebody gets hurt. And there's going to need to be movement, and it's going to have to be more than Dumba's salary coming off the books, unfortunately. Who would you move then, Kirsten? If Foligno's a no-go for you and you have to get rid of somebody else to free up a little bit of money to sign maybe Gus Nyquist, who you taking out?
I mean, that's a great question because I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't know why, but right before I went to sleep last night, and I was at the Saints game, so this was like after midnight, I literally was laying in bed going through all of the lines from this season in my head, and I'm like, who could we get rid of?
That's dedication.
Like, I'm not even lying. This was last night in bed. I was just like going through everything in my head. I'm like, what moves could the Wild make? I don't know, but don't get rid of Marcus Foligno. You can't get rid of Jewel. That's not even a question.
That's probably another one that's in the nest. Yes.
Yes. I don't know. Zuccarello. We could get rid of him.
You and I spend time in bed very differently. No, I'm just kidding.
Another out of context quote from Jessi Pierce on the Bardown Beauties podcast. Can't wait till my friend Chris gets a hold of that one.
You're welcome, everybody. No, the other name. You want me to toss out my other name? And it's
I do.
It's a player that I've said it before though, so it shouldn't be that surprising either. I think you look at maybe moving Marco Rossi. Now, I'm not saying Marco Rossi is a bust. I'm not saying we're giving up on him. I'm saying he is valued. So if you can get rid of him, and again, he's not under any big salary, he'd be one of those young guys that you need to lead. So there is that working for him. But I'm saying if you can, like I said, at trade deadline, if you can get something of value for him right now where you're still uncertain, I mean, why not? Why not explore it, package him with something else? Like, I just think that is an option. It has to be an option right now. Because as Bill Guerin said, I mean, they like Marco, they liked the chance he gave him, but he said he needs to get stronger. He needs to get bigger. And, is his development lagging? I don't know. And yes, I'm aware he dealt with some very, very serious health issues, and we're so happy that he's back and healthy, but it's just, I don't know. That would be another player.
Yeah, I could see that as a possibility, but I don't think Bill Guerin is ready to give up on him just yet. I think he's going to give him another full year, see what he does. And then after that, then if he's still just kind of where he is now, not really advancing, then I could see that being like okay, like we've tried, it's not working. But I don't think just yet he's ready to pull the plug on that.
Right. And again, being aware that they need to have young guys like Marco to step up, especially for the next 2 years, while the Ryan Suter and Zach Parise cap hits are remaining. It's probably less likely, but it's an option. Bill Guerin will consider every option. You all know this. Like, we're not going to be surprised. I just want to forewarn everybody and give a preemptive hug to all of you who maybe are attached to certain players that are probably no longer going to be with the team. I won't even name the rest of the names.
You're looking at me and saying this to me.
I don't want it either. Like,
I own his jersey. I am committed.
That's why you don't
I will hold a candlelight vigil for myself if that happens.
First of all, why do you have a name jersey? We don't do that.
I have a name jersey because I've talked a lot about Jonas Brodin and how he's like my favorite, but like Marcus Foligno is my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious. This is always a hot take, also like a hot button topic, if you will, not necessarily a hot take. Names on jerseys. I've grown up where I don't do names on jerseys, with the exception of legends. And not to say Foligno's not a legend, but like I would get a Minnesota Wild jersey of Kaprizov and Marc-Andre Fleury, because Marc-Andre Fleury is a freaking Hall of Famer, and to have him associated with the Wild is still very cool to me, very amazing. Other than that, like I've never done the name jersey thing.
See, I just get very attached.
See, this is the problem, because then, what are you going to do when he's playing
for the
Stars
next year? I am a fan first and foremost. So yes, if I like a player, if they've earned my respect, which quite honestly, it's very hard to do. If you've earned it, I'm like, yeah, You're my favorite. And he was my first wild jersey. Like I committed. I went to the hockey lodge. I didn't even buy a jersey from China. Like I went to the hockey lodge and bought an authentic jersey.
That's amazing. You spent your own money to do it?
Yes, my own money. I didn't get a discount on it either. Like it was my money.
I'd be curious. I want you guys to drop a comment in there. I'd be curious, like, what are your takes on name jersey? I'm not chastising necessarily. I'm chastising Kirsten because it's what we do, but I just am curious. Like I've never, because I'm always afraid that they're gonna leave, right? Like you don't want them to leave and have this jersey that you feel really. Did you see the Carolina Hurricanes guy who had a Spear Flyers jersey and who now plays for the Carolina Hurricanes? So he basically taped over the Flyers logo a Carolina logo so he could still wear his Ghost jersey. And the Hurricanes gifted him in their game a jersey yesterday.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I like that a lot. But everyone leaves me. Everyone I love leaves me here. So it's fine. I'm used to it.
You should be. It's part of being a Minnesota fan. Kirsten, now that we're heading into the off season, I'll be bikini sunbathing. You'll be working at your slaving restaurant job. Go visit her, go tip her well at Texas Roadhouse. But there's also work to be done for Bill Guerin. Off-season transactions. What are your priorities, do you think, for Bill Guerin? Does it involve him looking at the trade? Does it, obviously the NHL draft is the first thing that comes up on board. Free agency comes in July. Draft is in June. Is it trying to work out contracts with other people? What's your priority list for Bill Guerin?
I would say working on the contracts with players, seeing what you can work out with the cap space you do have. I would say that's arguably first and foremost. And I'm sure already like in contract talks as we speak. Clearly he is, because he re-signed Marcus Johansson for 2 more years. So clearly like that was immediate. Like I don't think the guy even took a day off. Like I'm sure he's just been grinding away. But also I would say evaluating the coaching staff is another priority. I think Dean's good. Dean is safe, but the special teams the assistant coaches in charge of special teams.
That's all of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd agree.
Specifically the power play and penalty kill.
Yes. So see you, Bob. See you, Brent. Yeah. Darbs, you're always it's crazy to me that Darby Henderson survives every time somehow, some way. But I think
Darby's safe as well.
I think the writing's on the wall for that. And you're right. And the more I know, last episode, we were kind of I particularly was literally calling for heads, saying that, Dean's likely to be under fire. I had an epiphany. They don't want to pay somebody that's no longer on the payroll. They had to do that with Bruce. They're obviously still paying Suter and Parisi without actually being here. So they'd have to do that with Dean too, because I think he's got another 2 years on his contract. Let me just verify that because I want to make sure. But yeah, I think so. He's probably safe for that reason. But it's still, I imagine he's got to change things, right? Do you think Dean is capable of changing his style and approach? Because I think that's the biggest concern, right? Like, do you think he'll
I would agree. I don't think it was really like a concern I had until I really got thinking about it when you brought it up last week. Like, you look at the playoffs. I didn't even realize how bad, like, historically his playoff record is just for all of the teams he's coached. And I think part of that is his lack of making adjustments in game, or like even during the regular season when he kind of had, I would say, a huge opportunity to really shake up lines. We saw little line tweaks, but we didn't see any major, like, blow it all up and see what happens. And it was very ominous, I think, heading into game 6. I talked about a blender of lines, and we didn't see that. Like, the biggest thing I think we saw in game 6 was before the third period, pulling Gus and starting Fleury in net for that third period. So I don't know. I would say, especially getting outcoached by DeBoer in the series against Dallas, I would say his lack of making decisions in game, tweaking things when they're not working, is the biggest concern for me.
Yes. And I was correct. He signed his 3-year extension in 2021. So he is the head coach until 2025. Very likely.
Also, I have another concern with how many young players we have coming up. I'm concerned he doesn't work well with developing young talent, like especially like, and maybe it's even bigger than Dean Evison, like the whole Kalen Addison situation this season. For one, I don't so much have faith that he's able to work with the young guys, which is pretty much our team for the next 2 years.
But
That
then he's going to
concerns
have
me a
to,
lot.
right? Like
He's
it's
going to
be
have
like,
to.
it'll
but
be
can
very,
he,
yeah.
can he do it? I don't know.
It'll be very, I said this on John's hockey show as well. It'll be very Moneyball. Like, oh, you want to play him? He's gone. You can't play him anymore. Like, I'm traded him. Giambi's gone too. Like, you just can't do it. And I think, I mean, it's funny because that the knock on Dean is not developing young players when he's a coach that, for the most part, did help develop a lot of successful guys down in Iowa, or not, excuse me, not in Iowa, down in the American Hockey League. Freddie Gaudreau as one. But yeah, it's interesting to me, but it's going to have to change. And I think Bill Guerin, because I feel like Bill Guerin might be feeling a little bit of heat himself too, right? I don't know that he necessarily recognized how difficult it was going to be to navigate the salary cap with these buyouts. I think obviously you knew, and again, zero regrets. I don't want to hear one person being like, oh, I wish he wouldn't have done that. Like, no, we're absolutely happy with that. And I know Bill Guerin is as well. I just
have been saying that. The Facebook commenters have been saying we never should have got rid of Suter.
Get real. Get effing real, man. Like, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. No, I just think that he didn't realize how much it would handcuff him. And it's funny, I was listening to him on Dan Barrero yesterday over on KFan, and he was saying that, you know, I wish the salary cap itself would have gone up a little bit more to help us out, right? Because it's still, and the salary cap will probably move up another $1 million, so that helps a little bit this year. But yeah, I imagine he's got to feel the heat, so he's got to relay that down to Dean. Like, Dean, we've got to change things. Now, I asked Bill what I thought was a very fair question, but I know it sounded dumb when I asked it, but my intent behind it was, so after, you know, Bill kind of responded curtly, and it wasn't a big fight. I love that everybody was like, oh, it's Russo and Billy going at, like, no, it was just a curtness to the response. And Russo continued to ask the question because it was a fair question about getting over that playoff hump. And in the course of Bill answering it, he said something along the lines of like, you know, it's going to be hard. There's going to be some pains to get where we need to be in order to get through the next year. So my response is like, well, is a playoff team a thing that we're going to be seeing? Like, should we be as consistently expecting the playoffs as you do? Like, should there be a year that you don't make the playoffs because you're in that quote unquote kind of rebuilding mantra? And obviously Bill laughed, and I think he understood what I was saying. Like, he didn't make me feel stupid by any means. He's not that kind of person, but he was saying like, no, of course you still want to make the playoffs. So it's not a full rebuild, but I do wonder, like, do you take these next 2 years back a little bit? Do you just kind of be okay with taking that step back, knowing you have these young guys? As I said, this year was a disappointment because I didn't have the expectations that I did last year, you know, or the year prior. You don't have the pieces. Next year, probably going to feel the same way. I don't know, Kirsten. Like, yes, it sucked to not make the playoffs. It'd be a weird thing in Minnesota, and so many teams make the playoffs. It shouldn't be that hard. But would you be devastated, or do you think it would be part of the plan if the Wild missed the next 2 years?
I'm fully expecting to miss the playoffs the next 2 years, to be quite honest. And I mean, yeah, it's going to be weird because the Wild have consistently been in the playoffs, whether they're getting bounced out of the first round or not. There's only like 1 year since 2015 that
2019 they missed.
2019 they missed. So yeah, we're used to being in the postseason. We're used to having a short stint, a week in April where we're playing. So it's going to be weird, but I mean, yeah, I think after this season, I don't want to say was the last hurrah, but I think things are going to be changing in Minnesota, getting ready for, again, like I mentioned earlier, like a passing of the torch, if you will, what we've come to know in Minnesota. And then really, like, I think starting the next couple of years where we won't get to see everything Bill Guerin wants to do, but like, I feel this will really start to feel like Bill Guerin's plan moving into the organization he's really trying to build on the ice. And so it's going to be weird. It's going to be a lot of growing pains, but that's just where we're at. And I think everyone needs to buckle up, saddle up, get ready for the ride, because that's what we're in for.
Well, now that Kirsten and I have effectively brought down your Monday, let's get Kevin Gorg in here to positivity what's the word I'm looking for?
Reignite.
Reignite our positivity. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Kevin Gorg. What's going on, you guys? Jessi Pierce here. By now, you already know how successful Livea's doctor recommended program has been for me, but I want it to be a hit for you too. Join today and receive 3 months free plus a free gift during Livea's Client Appreciation Week running May 6th through the 12th. I'm down more than 20 pounds since joining Livea and far and away ready for the offseason away from the rink and hitting the beach. Get summer ready today by calling 855-GO-LIVEA or visit livea.com. That's 855-GO-LIVEA or livea.com and let them know Jessi Pierce and the Bardown Beauties sent ya. Well, we are back. Joining us now, the ever popular, ever beloved contract negotiator, harsh on Jessi, Kevin Gorg in the house. What's up, KG? How are you?
I'm good, you guys. Episode 176. I saw that in my Zoom meeting information when I logged on. That is pretty impressive. 176 of these shows. I've even had a chance to be a part of 3 or 4 of them.
Exactly. I love that. I think you were like our 3rd ever guest, and then you kicked off the season with us too. You are back as we unfortunately are wrapping up the Minnesota Wild season. Kirsten and I had some hot takes, hostile words after our immediate reaction when the Wild were bounced in Game 6. Kevin, how do you look back on the year and the postseason in general for your Minnesota Wild?
Well, I look at the year 2 ways. They overachieved in the regular season. There's no doubt in my mind. I think when I look back to where I was in September, looking at Gustafsson in camp and Flower, another year older, I'm like, man, if these guys can be in the conversation and have a chance to make the playoffs in those final couple weeks, I think I'd be happy. I thought it was a coin flip that they'd even get in, and I didn't think they'd eclipse 100 points in back-to-back seasons. So they overachieved during the regular season, and Dallas was a legitimate favorite. They were healthy. I think if you follow the betting lines, they were like minus 175 to win that series. But what's disappointing for me is, once again, the Wild grabbed a 2-1 lead in the series and then played their worst hockey of the series. And you know, part of that is certainly who wasn't there. Joel Eriksson at the top of that list. And a part of it was they got too wrapped up in the officiating. When I look back at the playoffs and what happened with Dallas, is Pete DeBoer in Dallas showed more composure and handled the pressure of the playoffs better than Dean Evason in the Minnesota Wild. And that's just the bottom line. I mean, they just got too wrapped up into, you know, Dallas and the diving and the physical grit stuff and taking penalties. And you know, the special teams once again was a struggle. And because of all that emotion and all those penalties, they got beat.
I think that sums it up pretty well. KG, how upset are you with Jessi that she picked the Wild to win in 7, knowing how superstitious you are?
You know, it felt like the Titanic when it hit that iceberg. When I got that update that Jessi had actually picked Dallas. I mean, all year long, there were simple instructions involved here. Kirsten was allowed to pick Minnesota because she wins at about a 75 to 80% clip. And Jessi was banned from picking the Wild because her picks were wrong 75 to 80% of the time. And so when it comes down to how meaningful playoffs are, I thought she was more of a team player. And it hurt that she went that direction, and it cost us.
You know what? I let hope sink into my soul just a little bit. I wanted it. I wanted to will it.
Next year, you'll learn from this mistake. Next year, you'll pick the other side, and we'll have a better chance of winning. I get it. You know, jinxes aren't real, and that whole narrative that LaPanther tries to shovel out on his social media platforms. But truthfully, with Jessi, they really are real.
the kiss of death, if you will.
I walked into that practice right before the series was about to kick off, and Kevin asks me, who did I pick? And I said, I picked the Wild in 7. He goes, well, that's it. That's over. It's done. Yep. It's not even a hope. He gave up on them immediately because of my poor judgment. I apologize. Apologize mostly to you, Kevin. Apologize to the fans. It is on me. It's not on anybody else, but it's on me. I should let Bill Guerin know that as well.
No, we'll move on to better days ahead. But it really, it was a hell of a fun season, and I mean that sincerely. Like, you look at this, I know Wild fans get so bitter, and with Twitter now, everything is just a cesspool of negativity. But if you really look at this year for what it was, I don't care who they've got on the roster. If 97's taking the ice every night, I'm on the edge of my seat. But then you look at Matt Boldy, and we got a little glimpse into the future with Brock Faber. And I'll go back to Gustafsson. Like, I can't believe what Bill Guerin has found here. Like, when he came to training camp, I remember vividly watching some of those scrimmages and thinking, holy cow, the progress that guy made from where they were at the start of the year to where we are now, looking back after this season, dramatically different. And you factor in that Jesper Wallstedt had a solid year in Iowa. I mean, the future does look great. I know people don't want to hear that right now because we're still fresh off this loss against Dallas, but the prospect pool is there. The young talent is there. And I know we've got a couple of years with the old hand or arms tied behind our back trick with Suter and Parisi, but I like where this thing is going. And I know if Bill Guerin is a part of this thing, at some point we're going to get that run. We're going to win that cup.
You know what, KG, you are the goalie guru, if you will, a legendary goaltender yourself. How do you feel about the tandem? Do you think Filip Gustavsson, obviously he proved us through 39 starts and a handful during the postseason that he is capable of being the 1A. Marc-Andre Fleury, as we know, is a fantastic human, fantastic goaltender, okay with taking the secondary starts. Do you think that tandem will be as successful next year in the regular season as we saw this year?
I think it's a hard, they raised the bar to a high point, and I think Gustafsson still has some growing to do. And I think the playoffs will help him because, listening to his assessment of his own play, he was great in game one and just pretty average after that. So it's a process. And I think for goalies, you don't really know who they are until they get into the 150 to 200 game range. And he's nowhere near that right now. That's the exciting part. Marc-Andre Fleury already has had a giant impact on his development, and they seem to play well off each other. They play a completely different game, but no, I feel good about the fact that Gustafsson will probably play 2 of every 3 games next year. That progress and that development can get sped up by him kind of taking over. And Marc-Andre Fleury seems excited to be just a part of the team and be that guy waiting in the wings. And when he plays, he'll play with that passion and I think put out the team in a position to win hockey games. So no, I feel good about it. I really do, because Gustafsson is just really kind of dipping his toes into the water here. And for goaltenders, experience seems to be everything, and he's still getting his.
And moreover, it allows Jesper Wallstedt another year down in Iowa. Do you think that is the right play there? I mean, Bill Guerin has overemphasized, the development, the need to not rush these guys, which I completely agree with, but I know everyone's clamoring because we know what Jesper is capable of. But it took him a while to find his footing in North American hockey here this year down in Iowa.
Yeah, I think the more time you can give him to really settle in and find his feet and be the guy down there, the better he'll be when he gets up here. And I think the timing is obvious. It looks like, Fleury has one more year left. My guess and everybody's guess is he'll retire. So you've got Wallstedt down there, and maybe they sprinkle in a handful of starts for him in this upcoming season. You never know what, the season will present as far as injuries and how those goaltenders play. But I wouldn't be shocked if he got a little taste of it next year. And then in 2 years, you look at a tandem that could feature Gustafsson and Wallstedt, 2 young goaltenders with bright futures. This is a team that really, if you look at where they're headed and some of the young players that we still haven't even seen at the professional level in our organization, by the time they finally get the Suter and Parisi money off the books here, and I'm talking about 3 years from now, look out, because Bill Guerin's going to have money to take some big swings. There's going to be some young players that have had time to kind of get their seasoning and kind of get their careers off and rolling. There's real potential here. It's still going to come down to some other players that need to take a step. I think of Marco Rossi. I think of Kalen Addison. What do we get from Sammy Walker? There are players that are closer right now than some of the prospects I'm talking about. But if you're a Wild fan and maybe you're starting to get over that disappointment of the playoffs and you really look at this thing and break down where this organization is, the future is absolutely going to be a good one. And there is a cup run coming.
I hope you're right, KG, because I think everyone here deserves it, especially this past week. I mean, this has been a kind of rough, emotional roller coaster of a week for a lot of people. What have you been doing to cope?
Well, I'm getting ready for the Kentucky Derby. We've got a big weekend out at Canterbury, so that's allowed me to kind of move into my summer gig and get into horse racing. But no, it's been tough. I watch every night, and it's not the same when your team is eliminated. And I see Seattle in the second round. It's bittersweet because I'm a fan of Dave Haxtell. I used to cover him when I did college hockey back on Fox Sports North when I was working more in the WCHA, and I've known Haxtell for a long time, so I'm really happy for him and guys like Carson Soucy and Ryan Donato and some of the players on that roster. But then I'm like, wait a minute, the Seattle freaking Kraken get to go to the second round, and we're stuck once again on the sidelines watching everybody else play. And I look at what Vegas has cultivated with that expansion team and how well they've done. They look like one of the favorites now. I guess what softens the blow a little bit is Boston. I mean, they had an all-time record year. They look like a train ready to roll all the way to the Stanley Cup final, and they couldn't get out of the first round. So I guess if I'm a Minnesota sports fan, I can say, well, at least once in a while, the New England sports market has to feel a little bit of our pain.
Mm-hmm. Talking about the Boston Bruins and bringing up superstitions, do you think the President's Trophy is cursed?
Boy, it sure feels that way. If you look at the numbers, I mean, that might be bigger than the Jessi Pierce curse. I'm not sure, but do you want to be the number one seed? Do you want to be the team with home ice all the way through? I don't know what to make of it, because clearly you have a season like Boston had. You have the depth of talent that make the moves at the deadline to bring in key players. And they play on a Florida team that frankly was mediocre all year and was lucky to even get into the postseason. But this is what the hockey playoffs give you. And I think if you're a Wild fan and you're like, well, I don't want to wait 3 years. I don't want to wait for the Suter and Parise buyouts to be off the books. I want something now. The Florida Panthers should give you some hope, because if you can get into the playoffs, strange things can happen. Teams can get hot, and teams that are looked at as unbeatable, like Boston was, and even Toronto was a heavy favorite in this series. Things change dramatically in the NHL playoffs more than any other of the core four. So get in and have a chance. And I think Florida has taught us that this year, because they've caught lightning in a bottle. They were left for dead in that series. They win one game, a game they were completely outplayed in on a fluky play where a goaltender misplays the puck, and their whole season and their whole fate gets tipped upside down.
I mean, it's interesting to me that the way that teams are winning are very different. Like, you look at Florida. Florida's winning behind Sergei Bobrovsky and Matthew Tkachuk as well. But right, I think Bob is playing unreal hockey in net. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the quote last night from the Toronto goaltender who said, "I don't give an F how Bob is playing. We're both doing our job." But then Seattle isn't necessarily just relying on goaltenders. Seattle kind of has all these different pieces. And granted, we've seen Seattle time and time again throughout the season. They had a heck of a season. This isn't really a total shock how well they're doing now. I think what frustrates me, you guys, is that it proves that Dallas is beatable, right? Like, I think that's what still kind of irks me. I've made amends. I've come to terms with the season being over. I am now jobless, you guys, which is great, because I'm just going to spend the summer out in the backyard. But do you guys think that the Minnesota Wild could have beaten Dallas had they kind of play, let's forget that they didn't have Joel Eriksson, which I do think made a huge impact, but in general, if they had kind of gotten their things together a little bit earlier, Dallas was beatable. KG, start us off. What do you think?
Well, they were beatable. I just think the room for error for Minnesota certainly narrowed when Joel Eriksson got hurt. I remember that night in Pittsburgh, and just the feelings we all had, the Ryan Carters and all of us that travel with the team, like, this was such a huge setback. They proved, though, after the first 3 games that there was a template for success. And I think the biggest thing they could have done is played a game that was more dictated by 5-on-5 hockey, not getting wrapped up into the emotion of the series, the physical side of things. You can still play a grit first style and play in your face hockey and get out there and play the way you want to play without going over the top. And I look at the play by Marcus Foligno, and I know it wasn't a 5-minute penalty, but you can't help but think at that point in the series how momentum had shifted to the point where Dallas was in our heads. And now, when that official review happens, the fact that Marcus Foligno kind of aired the officials out the game before in his post-game presser in the locker room with everybody gathered around big number 17 probably didn't help. And I think there's a better way to go about it. But no, the Wild didn't have a lot of room for error. You're going against a goaltender in Jake Ottinger that frankly was just okay in games 2 and 3, and then really got to his game. And he's a top 5 goalie in the world, in my opinion. So between the Ek loss, who you're playing, the health of Dallas, and you think of, okay, well, wait a minute, Dallas lost Joe Pavelski. We've seen how good and impactful he can be in this series with Seattle. Let's not forget that when Pavelski went out, his replacement in all those key areas is a guy named Tyler Seguin, who's a stud. No disrespect to Sam Steele, but when Joel Eriksson Ek goes out and you're plugging in Sam Steele, it's not a fair fight. So it was going to be difficult. There was a way to do it. But I do think if you really look at this and handicap the series and know that Dallas was a heavy favorite, the better team probably won.
Yeah, I think part of it too was I think it was the Wild's lack of making adjustments when they needed to during the game. Again, like even just watching part of this Seattle series, it seems like Dallas has figured Jake Ottinger out, or excuse me, Seattle has figured Jake Ottinger out a little bit more than the
Blocker
Wild
side.
were able to. Jessi.
All I've been saying, I said it the whole first series. Go blocker side on him. He was bad on that in high school too. Sorry.
There's a way to beat him up high. You can't beat him down low very often,
Right.
maybe 5-hole, but you're right. You guys both talk about, and we showed it during our broadcast, and they looked at the numbers throughout the entire balance of the season. And I want to say it's close to 75% of the goals were scored either blocker high or glove high. And that's the only place you can beat the guy, because he's a big body that's quick and agile and moves big. And he's got those giant pinball flippers down low. And so, there is a way to beat him. And I think if you watch the way Kaprizov tried to attack him, when he did get his chances, even from bad angles, he was going up high and he was going to that blocker side you guys are talking about. It's a frustrating result, because when you get a 2-1 lead in the series and all that pressure shifts to Dallas, you've got everything the way you need it. And I didn't think they played a bad game in game 4. I just don't think they were as aggressive in game 4 as they were in game 3. I remember Dallas coming out, hitting a couple pipes early, and there was a nervous tension in the building on that Sunday afternoon. Completely different atmosphere from that Friday night when it was just a crazy drunken party. You get the families in there and the kids, and then you get the Minnesota sports team and all. God, Dallas got the first goal, and you could just kind of feel the air coming out of the balloon. To the Wild's credit, people forget that game was 3-2 late, and they got the grade A chance of all grade A chances with Marcus Johansson on that play through the seam. Hey, Ottinger makes that save. That puck goes in. I'm telling you, it's probably a different series. That's the lot in life we have right now to kind of reflect on what could have been. But I didn't like the way they played game 5. I don't think they gave themselves a chance to win. And I think that kind of carried over to game 6. Dallas had all the confidence and all the momentum.
Well, you also bring up Marcus Johansson. How huge is it that we have him for a couple more years?
Yeah, guys, that's exciting, right? You guys got a chance to get to know him a little bit this year. He's just a quality guy. And Bill Guerin has a knack for getting these guys to sign team-friendly deals early in the negotiations. I mean, we've seen it with Ryan Hartman. We've seen it now a couple of times. Freddie Gaudreau with that extension. And, you take a look at this. I didn't think the Wild would get him for around $2 million a year, especially after what we saw here late in the season and into the playoffs. The impact he has on that second line with Boldy, the way he can ignite a power play, the skill set that he brings to the table. Phenomenal signing. It's going to get dicey here. I think fans have no idea, once they start to let the dominoes fall, how difficult this is going to be for Bill Guerin and his staff, and how much really the Wild are going to rely on some of these players that are in Iowa right now to be a part of this team next year. I mentioned those names earlier, Sammy Walker and Marco Rossi specifically. If they're going to get this done, and they've still got to sign Gustafsson and then kind of let the chips fall where they may, there's not a lot of wiggle room here for Bill Guerin and his staff.
Kirsten and I talked earlier about the off-season priorities and things that we'd like to see Bill Guerin do. Excuse me. Matt Dumba, obviously a player that not probably going to come back in any capacity because you can't afford to do so. And he's got to go make his livelihood. But KG, talk about Dums and what kind of person he is and the player that you've seen him grow into be since he came here as a draftee and up to now 10 years later.
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky, you guys. This is just finished my 17th year doing the job. And so I've seen Matt Dumba from day one to where he is right now. And just for me, he's always been a really solid player on the ice, but it's always been what he's all about off the ice. He's such just a character guy, right? He cares so much about his teammates. He cares so much about the community, and he shows that in his actions. And, I always go back to that story from a couple of years ago where it was a cold winter night here in Minnesota, and he's driving home from a game around midnight, and he sees a family on the side of the road with an issue with their car, and he pulls over, helps them fix their car, gets them to a safe spot, and specifically asks them not to contact the media, didn't want the attention. I don't know how it leaked, but it did. That is who I will always remember Matt Dumba as with the Minnesota Wild, and it's going to be tough to see him go. I just love the kid. I love what he stands for. He's the best of the best in terms of what a professional athlete should be. You don't have to be charitable, but Matt is, and he's in multiple areas in our community where he's had an impact. And so he'll be missed on the ice for sure. But for me, I'll miss the conversations, the fun off the ice, the energy he brought to the locker room, the pump up music that he provided in the room. It's not going to be the same without him. It sucks. I understand it. And, Matt's got to go make his living, and the Wild certainly can't afford to pay him. It's a lot like the Kevin Fiala situation. We all knew it was coming, and when it actually happens, it is a bummer.
Didn't Dumb start the K-Train nickname for you as well?
Well, he stole that from Darby. Now, the K-Train thing, I get a lot of questions about this. Darby Hendrickson played with a guy named Christopher Kalanos, journeyman back in the day. Double K's were his initials, kind of like Kirsten. And this journeyman scores a goal early in a hockey game and comes to the bench and looks at these veteran players like Darby Hendrickson and says, "Don't worry, boys, today all you have to do is ride the K-Train." So he's talking to the third person, calling himself the K-Train. I told Darby it's the greatest story I've ever heard. And I love the story so much, I'd make him tell it multiple times. And so Darby, to get me to shut up and stop asking about Kalanos, started calling me the K-Train. And I hated it. And then it just kind of got down to Brunette, who passed it down to Dumba, to Foligno, and off we go.
I like it. I dig it. I that's what I'm gonna go with. I like it. I like it almost as much as I like Jonas Brodin cursing live on air with you. That's my second favorite moment of KG.
Of all the players, right? The nicest, most quiet, humble guy, Brodin. This was during the pandemic, I believe, because I was interviewing him from up in the concourse to the headset and the whole thing, and it was on live TV. And the look, like a little kid that gets caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Jessi, you can relate with your kids running around there. Like, did I just? Oh yeah, I just did that, didn't I? Yeah, you did, Jimmy. Yeah, you did.
I need to go find that clip.
Oh, it's great. It's outstanding.
Kirsten is a Jonas fan, big Broads fan.
Yes, very big fan.
Tough not to be.
You could actually do her a favor. She wants to find all the Swifties in the Minnesota Wild locker room. So if you could ask that question every single time on air, I think there's more than we realize.
For me to ask, right? I mean, the Swifties are there for sure. Some of the music we hear in the room, there are tells, and a lot of these guys don't have the greatest poker face. But if you think I'm going to go in there and ask about Taylor Swift, you got another thing coming. Double K, you might have to do your own legwork on this one.
K-Train, I need you to help a girl out here. I don't have the locker room access that you do. And plus,
we'll negotiate, but I think in the end, this might fall into the category of Jessi Pierce will be on the case and getting us the information. I'm not asking about Taylor Swift in any of my interviews. I can promise you that.
I'll do it.
That's a little upsetting this early morning, but I'm willing to grind. I'm willing to do the work. I've got that spreadsheet going. I'll put my boots to the ground. We'll get this done.
I would say Brodin, though, is probably if there's a betting board in the room, he's got to be the post-time favorite for lead Swiftie. And I'm just guessing, just speculating. But those Swedes get it. They know extreme talent, iconic music when they see it and hear it. So yeah, I'm with you on the 25 steam.
Since we're placing bets, KG, I know you got to get rolling. You've got a busy weekend at the racetrack. Want to get your two hot takes. One, who's going to win the Stanley Cup now that the playing field has dwindled down slightly? And two, your hottest take for the Minnesota Wild offseason. Maybe it's bringing Matt Dumba back on a $1.2 million con. I don't know. Give me your hottest offseason take for the Minnesota Wild and your Stanley Cup winner.
Well, I talked before the Wild series against the Dallas Stars, and basically every interview I did, I said the winner of this series is going to the Cup. I believed it. And so I'm going to go with the Dallas Stars. I like their response in game 2. I'm a huge Jake Ottinger fan. I don't like the team. I'm not going to sit here and tell you as an old North Star guy that I want to see Dallas win another Cup, but I can pull for Jake Ottinger, and it would flatter the Wild if they make a run right now, because I think Wild fans have to realize that is a damn good hockey team that is healthy right now with a coach that I think can get them into the right spots. So if they can get through this crazy Seattle team that won't go away, this pesky group of Kraken, I think Dallas could be the team. And then as far as my hot off-season take, I guess what I'm going to go with is this. Bill Guerin will make an impactful trade. And I don't know what it's going to be, but I know the man, and I've seen the track record, and I love that he's got a little riverboat gambler to him. So there is going to be an impactful trade made where a big name, maybe a young player on this organization right now, is moved, and somebody you haven't thought about is moved in. I don't have that glossary of names that Bill Guerin and his staff have, but my hot off-season take is there is a big trade coming somewhere down the line.
I mentioned the names. So yeah, we'll go with it. Let's go. I have the same feeling. Bill Guerin kind of lightly indicated and then hard indicated there will be a trade this season. He just has to. There's not enough money to even right now do recalls from Iowa as they head into the next year. So I think things need to change.
Well, and I think if you look at Bill Guerin and what he's done, and I'll go back to Fiala last year, like everyone in the league knew the Wild didn't have the money to pay Kevin Fiala. So he somehow negotiates a deal to get Brock Faber and a first-round pick for Kevin Fiala. I am blown away by what Bill Guerin and his staff have been able to do. And then I look at the moves he made this year and the impact that these players have had. I even go back to the Jake Middleton trade for a goaltender that, as great a kid as he is, he's not an NHL goalie. I'm sorry, he's just not. I trust what they're doing. And every move they make, there seems to be, as the time progresses, you're like, wow, that actually was pretty shrewd. So whatever he's going to do this summer, maybe it's multiple deals. You got to feel good that whatever he does will have a positive effect on this roster. And as long as you've got Kirill Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson, Matt Boldy, and some of the star power this team has right now, if their goaltending holds up, they're going to be right back in the playoff conversation next year. And hopefully, in these next 2 years before the buyouts are off the books, these guys can get over the hump, as Michael Russo talked about in that exit interview with Bill Guerin. We got a little dicey there, but Wild fans deserve it. They packed that building now year in, year out. It's such a great place to work. The three of us are privileged to that, and Double K, you're a part of that, and it's an awesome place to watch a game. So let's just keep our fingers crossed that they continue to progress with their young talent, make some shrewd moves here in the offseason, and next year make a little bit of a run.
K-Train, you're the best. Oh, go ahead, Kirsten.
You always make me feel so much better just listening to you talk. It makes me hopeful.
It doesn't. I'm still dead inside, KG, but that's not because of you. It's just too much of this. I can't do it.
It's tough. Listen, we're Minnesota sports fans. We get beat up a little bit, but the beauty, Jessi, is, and Double K knows this, is every time you get knocked down, you get back up and you're just a little bit stronger, and we're going to keep going. We're going to keep fighting. Sooner or later, we're going to have one of these Zooms in the middle of like July, and we're still going to smell like champagne from being down on West 7th and celebrating that Stanley Cup. I believe it. I honestly believe it. I wouldn't say it unless I did. Bill Guerin, as long as he's here, it's going to happen. At some point, we are going to be drinking from the cup at Tom Reed's Hockey City Pub. We're going to push Kevin Fallness down the road. We're going to have a great time.
Did you just Chumbawamba us too? I get knocked down, but I get up again. I feel like that's how we're going to close the K train with a little Chumbawamba. I don't mind it.
Hey, you know what? Sometimes you got to reach back into one of those cheesy good songs that they overplayed, like Macarena. What was that Macarena?
We learned it in gym class.
Oh,
fantastic.
Awful.
Favorite
Just
song.
Awful.
Well, K-Train, thanks for stopping by the Butte Station. You're the best. We will see you out at Canterbury, I imagine, this summer. Quite plenty. And then before we know it, back at the hockey rink. I love it. Thank you so much, buddy.
Thanks, ladies. Always fun to be with you.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back. Kevin. How can you not love that man?
I love him, but I am a little upset. He said he wouldn't help me find out the Swifties in the locker room. I'll get over it. That's fine.
He will. He'll ask those questions.
He will.
He likes asking those questions to the guys. But we could, I have zero qualm. I could probably do that for you. It just is.
Thank you. You still didn't ask Jonas Brodin if he was going on the Eras tour, though.
While he was publicly speaking at a podium about how bad the team sucked in the playoffs.
No,
felt like an inappropriate time.
No. You had time before then.
I forgot.
Yeah.
Actually, to be fair, he never takes morning skates. So there's never that opportunity.
When you're that good, you just don't have to.
It's when he's hurt. He's maintenance day all year. So that's why I couldn't accomplish your requests. That'll be kickoff to training camp.
It won't matter at that point.
Well, but he could regal me on what he thought, maybe.
That's true.
I could have notes for you to
at the
compare.
Eras tour.
There you go. See, people get it. We'll work on it. We'll work on it.
The movement.
Speaking of working on it, people are working toward the Stanley Cup, even when the Minnesota Wild are not, because that's our lot in life. That's how things work. Kirsten, now left with the field. I believe we both picked Boston, if I'm not mistaken, for the
Yes,
Stanley
we
Cup,
did.
which like everybody else in the entire hockey world did. Who is your new favorite for the Stanley Cup champion?
Oof. I'm really, really liking the way Florida is playing right now. I see them going to the cup final. I don't see them winning.
Dang, that's hefty.
I'm going to say Vegas, and I hate to say that, but I think it's going to be Vegas. I don't want to see Vegas because they've been a team in existence for 4-5 years now. I am so anti the expansion teams that are doing well. Seattle, no, I don't want to see you
I kind of want
advance
Seattle
out of the second round because I'm bitter at the expansion teams doing well. So no, I don't want any of it, but I think it's going to be Vegas.
I'm going Toronto out of the East because I feel like if Toronto can do it, that gives Minnesota hope again. Like, hey, look at what Toronto, and I love Mitch Marner. I'm such a Mitch Marner fan.
Same. But Matthew Nyes did unfortunately go down with an injury in last night's game, and that's a huge loss.
Yeah. That's their Jesus out there. That's their Kaprizov, I think he'll be fine. He'll be great out there too. No, but I think for some reason I'm feeling Toronto. I don't know why. I don't like Florida. I think it's because I'm not a big Paul Maurice fan. And so I don't care for Florida. So I'd like Toronto to go. Carolina, obviously, I do like Carolina too. For some reason, I keep forgetting about that series as a whole. Keep forgetting about Carolina. No disrespect. I just do. Sorry. So let me answer. Toronto in the East. And I kind of want Seattle. I don't know why. I just do. Ultimately, I want whoever has the most Minnesota. Yeah, but it's kind of fun to watch them do this. Like because they're not like Vegas. They sucked last year, right? And then they didn't really change a whole lot. Now this year they came into the regular season doing all this stuff because guys finally bought in. Like we had our boy Everett Fitzhugh on earlier on in the year to talk about what was making Seattle so good. So go back and listen to that episode. But like, and plus Seattle's jerseys look like ours. Let's go with that. Like, let me pull a real girly thing and say like, oh, they look like our jerseys. We like that. Like, I don't know. Seattle'll be
a team in their second year of existence. It is not fair. I'm going to be better. I'm going to be that person. When you look at Minnesota, who's been around for over 20 years and has never made a Stanley Cup final. I don't want to see it. No, wait your turn.
Kirsten.
Not fair. And I'm going to be bitter about it.
Life's not fair. I'm sorry. Well, let me know your guys' picks. Would love to hear it. That's going to do it for this week's episode because we don't want to keep droning on about the same stuff. We will still be giving you content each and every week, probably, unless we're on vacation or doing something way cooler. But generally speaking, we do have one final live show coming up at the end of the month in Hastings. So be sure to stay tuned to our social channels for more details on that. As always, thank you to our awesome sponsors, Talk North, Grain Belt, Jim Beam, Livea, and Royal Credit Union. You guys all rock. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll be in touch. No, we won't. That was weird. We won't be in touch, guys, but you know what I mean. Have a good one.
This podcast is made possible due to listeners like you. Thank you.